Heaven walks among us, ordinarily muffled in such triple or tenfold disguises, that the wisest are deceived, and no one suspects the days to be God's.
Roll with it. So rolling with it here along season 6, If It Be Your podcast. What a beautiful, beautiful person I have here for today. I have Carson McHone coming in from her home in Ontario, Southern Ontario. I'll make a preference of that. And me coming in from Southern Quebec, right across the border. Now, Carson, you are a native to Austin, Texas. Is that?
I am. So I'm from south of this nearest border. I'm from south of the border. Yeah, from Texas. I grew up in Austin.
Cool. Great city. Like,
yeah, it is.
City to grow up in. Visited Austin many, many times, and it's just the music scene there in particular I always was fascinated with. That
yeah.
You could find music any day of the week. Any day.
Oh yeah. And like so many shows going on every night. So
yeah. So cool. So Carson, I'd love to start these off with a couple of memories of the past.
Okay.
Of moments that you feel brought you closer to what you're doing today with music. Do you have some of those teen memories, early 20 memories of moments that you feel changed the trajectory of where you are now?
Gosh, I could probably point to a number of things. I mean, like you said, I grew up in Austin, so I was really lucky to be able to go see music at a relatively young age. Not only does Austin have a lot of live music all the time and a, bustling local scene, but it's also a place where people stop on tour. And so there's just music all the time. And although my family weren't necessarily, like my immediate family, directly musical, there was stuff happening all the time that we would go to. And so my folks took me to see a lot of music live as a kid. And Austin's a relatively, I would say, all ages friendly, or at least it was when I was growing up, town. And my folks were friends with a lot of musicians. And so, yeah, I think just sort of the nature of being a young person in a town like that gave me an interesting perspective on making music my full-time gig. I do remember, in particular, there was one, I feel like I spoke about this recently, which is why it comes to mind. But I worked for, a number of years doing, many different odd jobs as like a teenager and in my early 20s, and worked at restaurants and stuff like that. And I finally made the decision to, or I guess it wasn't finally, I was in my early 20s, so I was still, quite young, but it felt like I was finally making sort of a career decision or a path decision. And I announced it on stage. I was playing at the White Horse in Austin, and I had put my 2 weeks in at my job, and I was done. I was done waiting tables, and I announced it from stage. I think I had a weekly residency at the time. And so, it was a crew of people that were a little bit more familiar with me. Like, I'm sure many friends of mine were there. And so it was like,
the declaration.
Okay, this is from here on out. This is what I'm doing, which is kind of, it's absolutely what I'm pursuing. But I think those things, obviously, with time and age, shift and change how you define those things. I mean, I was not a great server, but I would not be against, waiting tables again. But you probably wouldn't want me to. But
right.
yeah, I think I'm pursuing the thing that I've, at least for now, am trying to be the best at that I can be, as far as the other things I've pursued in my life. So
yeah,
that was definitely a turning point and a pretty, I guess, a profound moment in a way. I guess maybe I'd already made the decision, but it became a reality.
Yeah. Well, you've dabbled in creativity. It
Mhm.
feels like your whole life. And creativity is sometimes hard for people to welcome in or understand or accept or understand how it works, that creativity comes as you are creative.
Mm.
How was your process in always trying to push your creativity forward? And maybe not only in music. I know that you're a writer, and you know, creativity seems to be central as to who you are at this point in your life. Was that a gradual growing, or do you make it a part of who you are, that practicing of creativity has to happen continuously every day?
I think so much of that has to do with the way I was raised, because I do think it's more of it's absolutely a practice, but I think it's also just sort of a disposition to a certain extent, and one that I was sort of encouraged. I was always encouraged by my mother, and still am to this day, to sort of be open to, well, just open in general. I think at least that's the way that I feel it in me, is that we are constantly shaping the world around us, and our world and our perspective, and also being shaped by the outside things, but I think just that sort of recognition in general is more of a sort of disposition that I try to like carry as I move through the day, or my life, or whatever. And sometimes it's difficult to you know I don't even know if it's like a recentering, because I think maybe inherently as humans, maybe as children even, that maybe we are that way, and that we sort of lose touch with that, or we can lose touch with that. And as we get older and we have sort of more structure to our lives, that we can become removed from that state. And so it's a balancing act. But I will say that sort of in relation to this record too, and my being up here, I was gifted a journal that my mother kept when I was an infant. She kept it from in the first year of my life. And every entry is addressed to me. And I had no idea. I knew she always, journaled, but she gave it to me as a gift when I moved from Texas up here. And so that was kind of a pretty profound thing for me to have, sort of this tangible record, Yeah. And the very first entry, which made its way onto my record, actually, I have her speak it at the end of the album, opens the journal. It's about creating. And so I think that I try to nurture that sense of creativity and that sort of inherent, what I would like to think is an understanding that maybe it's always there. It's just a matter of, aligning yourself with that force, sort of. And it's just how I was raised. So I don't know that I can take credit for it, but I'm trying to nurture that and honor that. Yeah.
Sounds like your mom was the fundamental in that, in your creative development.
Yeah.
And not by gather around, let me,
No.
and observing. And
Totally. And she's not, she's not like she didn't make a career out of that, but it is just an inherent part of who she is in conversation, approaching, in her approach to dealing with issues at hand, anything really. And I really respect that. And I try to take after her in that way, but it's slightly removed. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a beautiful painting I'm seeing of, which, like that acknowledgement of such a precious gift that you received just because of who she is.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's just, it's very moving, moving to me. And I hope to honor that. I mean, it comes with, as do all things, its own baggage. But that is the thing. It's like, when you begin to go through that stuff, it's like, there are things that are heavier about it, this sort of sensitivity, but also, yes, what a gift, and so, some days it feels more like one or the other, but yeah, no, I'm here to sort of, I hope, honor it all.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing a wonderful job at it.
Thank you.
I'm sure she is, the biggest proud that you can be, watching her daughter develop into, a pretty amazing singer, a pretty amazing artist, and a very insightful artist as well. Which brings me to this, my next question for you is, how did you find that music was going to be that outlet for your creativity? Was it stumbled into? Because tell me if I'm wrong, or correct me if I'm wrong, that poetry was something that you have been doing before music, and that music came in through that avenue that you had already kind of been dabbling in for many years. Is that an accurate timeline, Carson?
Maybe not. I mean, I think so. I started the first time I ever played music was to take violin lessons as a young kid, and I took Suzuki violin lessons, and so it started sort of as like a 15-minute during the day exercise of sort of all this stuff taught in Suzuki early on is all sort of ear training and just memory. And I was not very good at violin, never became very good, but that was established at a very young age, that I was like, okay, this is a practice. And I think, I just sort of, I mean, music, and it's something that then became, how can I utilize this to express myself, because I'm feeling a lot. So yeah, I guess it became sort of this tool, but I mean, I also just like love music. But yeah, so I guess there's maybe an inclination towards the written word and poetry, but I definitely am not like studied in any way, really. I read a lot as a kid, and I try to read. Actually, on the last tour, I always carry around way too many books, but it's not often that I find or make time to read them while on tour. And I went through 2 books on this last run, and it was just like, oh God, I love this. But yeah, so I guess I've always had that inclination. And then the fact that music sort of was always in tandem, in a way, a part of my life. When I picked up, actually, my uncle gave me a mandolin. And so as a young kid, I was not into the structure and the classical style of the stuff I was learning on violin, but the mandolin, which is strung the same as the fiddle, like I could pick out some of the tunes, and then I sort of started taking lessons with actually this woman, Darcy DeVille, who's a Canadian living in Texas. And I took lessons from her, and was then sort of learned how to play stuff that I was into more so than the classical Suzuki stuff. And that
gave you the structure of process, like going through those,
yeah, that was
20 minutes. Okay, gonna do it. Have to do.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause you have to develop that as well, right? Like, as we were speaking to creativity, it's not something you turn on and off. It's a practice, and I think that process for artists is similar to that, where it's something that you need to do. It's an outlet that needs to get satisfied.
Yeah. And a muscle that needs to be, exercised, which it can be really frustrating when you're in sort of, out of step with those things, and you really, because it feels good to utilize those muscles. But yeah, when you're out of shape or out of step, it's so frustrating because you can't just turn it on or off. But anyways, yeah, so I think one thing kind of led to the other, and I think that the sort of love for the written word and poetry, and also the more musical side of things, kind of played off of each other and were in tandem there growing up.
Yeah, yeah. And when you are writing a song, what comes to you first, or does it vary? Like, is it a lyrical, or is it a tune, or a series of chords, or like when you sit down in that process of doing your craft? I mean, I'm sure there's a variety of ways. Can you fill in some of your process for us?
Sure. I would say that when I first started writing songs, it was, I think, just because I played a lot less, that it was always more of a lyrical beginning. And these days, I think it varies much more. I'll play around a little bit more on guitar, or there have even been a few songs that I've written now that started out on like a keyboard, which is still, kind of foreign to me, funny enough. So that's quite nice. Yeah, it really varies.
Yeah.
I would say I definitely lean towards like the things that I am ruminating on sort of lyrically, but I hope to find myself in the other zone as well. Yeah.
Right. And when do you know that, what's the feeling you have, or the acknowledgement you get when you know you're kind of onto a thread of something that you want to see through, rather than, yeah, I've tried this idea, just don't get it yet, and you got to shelve it for a while.
Yeah.
The opposite of that, when you know that there's elements in here that will blossom into something. Do you have a feeling, or a?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure that I do. I think it's funny though, because I do feel like, even if I have been taken my time or something, had been methodical and thought, oh no, I love how this starts and I need to have the rest of it come together, but be equally as good, and I can't rush it and I need to take my time. Still, no matter like after the fact, I always sort of feel like I've blacked out and I'm like, how did I, what, which I think is, not too uncommon, but that like after you finish writing a song, yeah, sometimes you're like, well, I don't know how exactly that came together. Yeah. Sometimes it's all at once and it hits you. And then other times, like you said, it's more methodical. But even still, I feel like after, and I think too, I mean, I've made a few records now, but yeah, it feels like sort of chunks or like project based for me these days. And I'm in this zone now of having released a record, and I'm like, what will the next thing be like? And then I'm like, what is it like to do that? I've forgotten, it's funny how that happens.
Yeah. And with the latest, Pentimento, great record.
Thank you.
It came out just recently, guys. The listeners out there, September 12th, hot off the press. Where did the name come from? We talked a bit about this before we hopped on here, but I just love this title because I think it represents so well what you did with this latest record. Can you put some words to the title?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about actually the timeline of things, and when I did actually stumble upon that word. But I have a sheet of paper that was ripped out of like a sketchbook or something that I was keeping, and I had done this drawing of my friend Layla, who I grew up with and who is now the mother of my godson, and so a very close friend, and Daniel, my partner. I had like drawn them both on the same page, and their faces were sort of overlapping in this strange way. And anyways, I can't remember what came first there, but I remember being in the van and writing down Pentimento on there, which is basically like the underpainting, but not necessarily the painting that informs what's on top of it in an obvious and linear way. You know, it can be something that was painted over. Yeah. So anyways, I had written this word out, and I think what happened is that like I stumbled upon this page again where I'd written, and I was like, wow, that is exactly all of this sort of embodies the stuff that I've been thinking about, and it represents so much, like literally, but also metaphorically. And yeah, again, I feel as if it was just sort of, oh, it's meant to be. And I couldn't tell you exactly how it came about. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because I did run across that page again, and I was like, wow, I wonder how long this has been sort of just sitting there waiting for this to happen. Oh, yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Well, in that photo shoot we did, I was working with a photographer out of Austin, and we had the way we got connected was because we sort of recognized we had some similar tastes and influences as far as like filmmakers, and so we were kind of trying to emulate these stills from these films that we loved. And that one in particular, Daniel was a part of the shoot as well. He also like helped to light a lot of the shots, but we did some together. And yeah, so for sure, that layering is always there. I mean, I think to me too, it's just thinking about, you know, a timeline and how you're influenced by things, and that whether or not it looks linear, these things are influences. And so that underpainting, you know, whether or not it literally informs the subject matter is not necessarily like the whole picture. And that there are these multiple things that are true at once. That's another sort of idea that I wanted to play with. And also I think being akin to the last record I put out, Still Life, which is also a visual art term, it felt just sort of like a natural progression. And yeah, I think that things pick up for me where they left off there. So.
And the new record too, you had kind of wrote all the songs in one isolated time in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And then you went to an analog recording. You recorded all this on an 8-track. Like it wasn't, you moved away from the digital and kind of went, like, it just seems like nature is like infused itself into this record in every way that you could possibly do it.
Yeah.
And you feel that when you listen to it, that it's
Beautiful.
It's one painting. You know, it's a one thing. You can't listen to one track, I find. Like the singles, they were great when they were coming out. But when the record came out, I was like, I get this.
I'm so happy. Yeah. I mean, that's how
Fluids and the everything that you put in. I guess your nephew is in there talking at one point too, just adorable. But
yeah,
it just feels like how you approach this record was you wanted to get back to something almost. Is that accurate in saying that?
Likely. I mean, I think that idea absolutely. I think it makes sense that would come up, because I think similar to what I was talking about with my mom's journal, sort of this like that a beginning is an ending as well, and there's just sort of this cycle that is continuous. And I did write much of this record in the desert in far west Texas in like the late summer of 2020. So it was sort of sequestered because of COVID. And I was out there, and yeah, I love to create out there. It's a beautiful space, expansive space that I feel is conducive to a certain kind of creativity. I think sort of like a swampy place too can be, but in a different way. But so the desert was where so much of this record was written, at least lyrically. And then, funny enough, all of these pieces sort of came together, and we made the recording by the ocean on the Bay of Fundy at a friend's house. And so it was funny and it was in the like late fall. It was the first snow that happened while we recorded. So it was very interesting to have these sort of juxtaposed influences, but all very natural. And I mean, I do feel like there are certain songs that to me are such desert songs. And then there are songs to me that I feel like I can hear the tide almost. And I hope, and I think that does come across in ways, whether or not what you're hearing is literally that or not. But yeah, very much elementally influenced.
It's funny too, when I speak with artists, like it's hard for a non-musician to understand the cycle of an album, right? Like it's like a child almost that you start to, rear, like it grows, you hopefully influence it in the right ways. And then it comes out and it's like the bird flying out of the nest. All right, on with, how are you seeing the record now with, well, maybe a few weeks between release? Are what you hoped that people would start to hang on to or start?
Gosh, I think so. I don't know what people are getting, but what I will say is that I've had a number of people reach out and say that they sat down to listen to the record and they listened through and immediately started it over again. So not only are they listening in full, but then doing it again, which to me is just like so beautiful and such an honor that people would do that. And so I don't know how it's manifesting in people, or what it necessarily, if they're putting a finger on something, or what it's resonating, but it is resonating, I think, deeply with the people that it does. I mean, for me now too, it's like there was the gathering of all of these songs and artifacts and like voice sketches and stuff. And then the actual recording process, which involved a group of friends and their instrumental voicings. And so then it's this whole other thing that happens, which is the actual recorded thing. And then to then parse it out and make videos for singles, which to me was so like you said, having it in a whole is sort of how it's intended in a way. But then fascinating to sort of parse all that out and build on these single songs. So yeah, it's just sort of layers upon layers. But I think that people are picking up on some kind of narrative, but I don't think it necessarily has to be, something that is defined. Same with like the desert or the sea or the summer or the winter. It's like you can feel that it is of that, but you don't have to necessarily define what exactly it is.
Right.
It's just there.
I think it comes back to the start of this conversation about creativity, and I think how you've harnessed creativity in your way and created this beautiful creative artifact that we all get to enjoy for till the end of time, which I mean, to me as an artist doing that, like just having this thing that's out there, it doesn't matter the stuff around it. It's that those songs are there and resonate somehow with other humans. That's
even that it just, for me, recalls the session itself, which was, I mean, that's been another thing about this record too, is the things that I'm sort of considering and thinking about in the songs, and even the process of making the record was just sort of process itself. And that if nobody ever heard it, it was worth my while in a way, because it's made up of all these experiences, and that has shaped me and is beautiful to me. So, that's another thing, is I just appreciate the whole thing. So it's really just the cherry on top that it resonates with anyone. But yeah, because I just appreciate the process.
Those words are beautiful. That reflection alone, like, sure, I mean, it might not pay the hydro, but, it's like, who gives a shit? Like, in a way that having that you can do that and buy that for yourself and your journey. I mean, it's kind of those things that you just, if somebody else gets it, awesome. But it was more about my process and my journey. And hey, shit, if you get something from it, awesome.
Well, and I think that's the thing, is if you're able to make something that truly feels that way to you, often I think it is sort of open-ended enough that people, like they sense that it's very personal, but it's not so personal that they can't relate to it, Right. And that's really great. And yes, I think it's like these ideas are the things that are profound to me. And if I can carve out a little time and space to make an artifact of that, which is the record, that's beautiful. But yeah, it's this fine balance of like, okay, what do I literally have to do and get done? And am I safe? And can I feed myself? And can we pay for this? And then also nurturing that side of yourself that is like, I am a child of this world. And what does that mean? And what am I from? And where am I going? And all of these things. And it's a balance. And so, yeah.
Oh, I love it. Well, Carson, thank you so much. This has been so amazing. I've loved your thoughtful words and how you speak about your craft. I think they're wonderful words for others to hear, to kind of start to understand their own, because you've been thinking about this for a while and it shows. So I thank you for sharing those words and thoughts with us all. And I wish you all the best with this record. I think that it's an outstanding record. I hope you come to Montreal and tour with it, or by, maybe hop in Julie's car as she has.
Yeah, right. Totally. Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a real pleasure. I really, really thank you for your time, and all the best in the future. And keep your eyes on Carson McHone. She's Verizon.
Thank you so much. Cheers. We'll see you down the road.
Sound from silence, the thrill which is delicate, with soft command of violence. So sensitive the sculptor is, with such intent and purpose, the meaning does transcend the form, and the art becomes the artist. To seek a persistent curiosity refines the covenant, and variation promises to crystallize the constant. And how rewarding it shall be, this new autonomy, to shape that which we have to share, so it may be received. For what is our break your gaze to see